sermon. We've actually got something else to do. They're over here, Lou. That's okay. A few weeks ago, we had a baptism, didn't we? Had two baptisms, really. Had baptisms down the beach, and they were great. But we have some certificates to give out, which we haven't well, the certificates we could have done at any stage, but actually we also have a little gift with it, which is sort of a tradition that our church from years ago always did, that we gave a Bible with a certificate for anyone that gets baptised. So Lou, can you go grab them? They're just on the pulpit there. And might ask Carrie and Sophia, you want to come up and receive from Lou? So it was a great day, and what do you think? Oh, I'm going to give them, am I? Bit tricky holding all my things. So who is this one for? So Sophia, for you. There you go. Oh, let's give her a clap. And Carrie, for you. So you can maybe show the people your lovely, your baptismal things. I don't know if you've noticed yet, but if you look at the picture, it's them. That's all right. So, yeah. So well done, guys. Very good. What's that, sorry? Well, from them, yes. Their baptisms themselves. I don't know. They were yours, were they? Oh, they were loose. Yeah. Anyway, all right, Ben, are we? Tell us when we're ready to go. We're ready to go. Excellent. So, after that exciting thing, we have to sort of come back to Revelation, don't we? Which actually is exciting, I think. Can I say it's interesting in worship, and Lou had all these words up here that came from Revelation. And it's interesting, I've noticed the way I'm thinking is different now that I'm delving deeply into the book of Revelation. The way I'm seeing God, the way I'm seeing the things, and now I'm having to have my head in it quite a lot. But it does change you a bit. So just because it's not so hard, can anyone tell me what was the main thing last week? What happened last week in the book? Oh no, it's too hard, is it? Can't think back that far. That was a whole 7 days ago. It was Revelation 5. The Lamb. What was the Lamb first called? The Lion of the tribe of Judah. So we had the introduction of the Lamb, who is Jesus, which is interesting. It's meant to be ironic. They say the Lion of the tribe of Judah has triumphed. And what you see is a lamb as if he'd been slain. So the great power that is God, is seen in this slain lamb. And that's quite incredible. And that was quite a big thing for those, particularly John's listeners at his time, who were undergoing persecution. And where was the real power in the world? Well, actually the real power wasn't in the things that looked mighty, not even in a lion, but was in a slain lamb. We're going to see a little more of that this week. So this week, I want to look at the 7 seals. That's not the 7 seals, That's right. Now, we have actually been introduced to these already because the introduction of the Lamb was about the 7 seals. Who can open? Who's worthy to open the 7 seals? That's why they say the Lion of Judah has triumphed, and we see a lamb. But what we see in Revelation 5 is them singing about the Lamb and worshipping the Lamb, and worshipping the Lamb and the one upon the throne as the same, as the great God. So, let's have a look at this. I thought I'd jump straight into this, the opening of the 7 seals. Let's see, what's the first one say? It's from Revelation 6 and 7 we're looking at today. And I saw the Lamb open the first of the 7 seals. And I heard the first of the 4 creatures saying with a voice of thunder. Does anyone remember which one was the first of the 4 creatures? 4 creatures. They looked like different animals, didn't they? No one remembers the first one? It's a lion, actually. The lion's the first. And that's why he speaks with a voice of thunder, isn't it? Lions speak quite loud. I know, I've heard them roar. They're amazing, very noisy beasts. So he speaks with a voice of thunder, "Come." And I looked and beheld a white horse. And the one sitting upon it had a bow, and a crown was given to him. He went out as a conqueror, that he might conquer. All right, so that's the first seal. Opens, and there's a rider on a white horse. Who do you think the rider might be? You think it's Jesus? And actually, you'd probably be wrong. Many people have said it, but actually it doesn't fit the scheme of what's happening at all. A good thing to understand about this, in the ancient times, the great conquerors, you have Alexander, you have Caesar, and many others like that, were always depicted riding on white horses. So the rider's not white, the horse is white, isn't it? It's a rider actually with a bow, which is actually quite fascinating because Roman conquerors didn't have bows. Jewish ones didn't have bows. In fact, their archers, all of those type of archers, they were foot soldiers that shot. It was actually very Eastern, the bow. The Parthians, the Persians, and all of that lot had the bow. So this would have sent a bit of a shiver. This would be people coming from the East taking over, conquerors. And of course, they knew a bit about conquerors in the ancient time because every once in a while, a new one would come through and take all the land. And that's what seemed to happen. It's certainly been happening for the last 500-600 years in those regions, that new conquerors would come and take the land. The Romans were just the latest. They happened to last quite a long time after this, but they were just the latest of them. So he went out as a conqueror that he might conquer. So that'd be an understanding for them of war and conquering and being conquered. Very common thing, certainly since the days of Nebuchadnezzar and all of them, great, and even before really, great kingdoms came and conquered. So, all right. So we have our first seal, don't we? We have the 7 seals, and I'm going to sort of put them here on a thing that shows us seals, the 7 seals. And the first one, number 1, is a white horse with a rider conquering the world. That's what we have. It's exciting. Doesn't say a lot about him, does it? That's all it says. Not much. All right. Does anyone know what's next? Chris, I know you do. You don't get to say it. All right. Let's have a look. It's sort of cheating. It's like I don't like to answer when people have these questions. It's only fair. But when he opened the second seal, I heard the second creature saying, "Come." Does anyone remember what was the second one? What's that? Eagle was actually last. It's the ox. That's right. And he just says it, "Come." And another horse, fiery red, came out. And it was given to the one sitting upon it to take the peace from the earth, that people might slay one another, and a great sword was given to him. That's a fascinating thing, isn't it? First one had a bow and was conquering. The next one, what's the next one doing? Making more war, but actually making people fight with each other. Yeah, inciting war. And he's given a sword to incite war. There are many ways to incite wars. Very famously an ancient one, someone stole another one's wife. And that started a war, didn't it? Some may know which one I'm talking about, yes. Whether that's a true story or not, we don't know, but it's a good story. So, we've got 2 so far, haven't we? We've got a white horse with a rider, we've got a red horse, creating enmity between people. That's what he's doing, and having them fight with each other. All right, so what's next? And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third creature saying, "Come." Third creature is a man. And I looked and I saw a black horse, and the one sitting on him having scales in his hand. And I heard as a voice from the midst of the four creatures saying, 1/4 of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do not damage the oil and the wine. What on earth does that mean? Seems like a strange thing to say, doesn't it? Does anyone want to hazard a guess what they're talking about? See, we don't know these things. When we read it, we go, I don't know what that is. It's part of not living at the time, isn't it? Ah, well done, John. What is the going price for a quart of wheat? Oh. I remember years ago doing a sermon here when we were just in our little group preparing to be here, and I did a sermon and we were looking at the forgiving servant, or the unforgiving servant. And when I looked at the amounts that they were forgiven, it's stunning. The amount that Jesus says that the unforgiving servant was forgiven is like multiple times. It's like winning the lottery. Huge amount. And the amount that his servant owed was tiny. And we don't see that when we read it because we don't understand the systems of that. It's a bit the same here. A quart of wheat usually cost 1/16 of a denarius. That makes a bit more sense here, doesn't it? Oh. Yeah, so, and actually they had laws in place that even in the times of war and of famine, they would hold it at maximum. You could only sell it for 1/8 of a denarius, at maximum. So in other words, something seriously going wrong for a quart of wheat to be a denarius. A denarius was a day's wage. A quart of wheat was the wheat you needed for a day, but you needed everything else too, didn't you? Yeah, barley was the poor man's food. Wheat bread was good, barley bread. Have you had barley bread? It's not quite as good, I don't think. No, yeah, you understand. Wheat was better than barley, so yes, definitely. So we see here, oh no, the prices have gone up massively. Famine in the land, absolute famine, and they haven't been able to control the prices. The bit about the don't damage the oil and the wine, because they're really important too, and they're the only way that merchants can make any money, but they're struggling with that too. So it's a sign of great famine. Great famine. And that's the idea of the scales in his hand. It's the weighing of the food, the weighing of the measures, and all those sorts of things. So we've got 3 horses so far. We've got a white one conquering the world, a red horse with his rider creating enmity between people, and a black horse, can't even say it, horse, bringing famine and hunger. All right. Oh. What do you think is going to happen next? A unicorn, maybe. Yeah, let's have a look. And when he opened the 4th seal, I heard the 4th creature saying, "Come." The 4th creature is the eagle at last. Yes. The eagle says, "Come." And I looked and I saw a green horse, and the name of the one sitting on him was Death. And Hades followed after him. Sounds horrid here, isn't it? And authority was given to him over a quarter of the earth to kill with the sword, famine, death, that's disease, and by the beasts of the earth. I look at this, and it's interesting, we've already had the sword twice, haven't we? We've had fighting, conquering, but this is the death resulting from those things. Famine, we already had famine. We haven't had the disease. Technically, literally it means disease, but in Greek, but it also it means death, but it is the word they use also for disease coming, plague coming. A great plague on you. And by the beasts of the earth. What does that mean? Well, lions and eagles, possibly. Dangerous beasts. And we've got to actually remember, back in those days, we think, oh, how likely are you to be killed by a dangerous beast? Certainly here in Colonel Lake Gardens, it's very hard for that to happen to me. I could possibly be bitten by a snake that's dangerous here in Australia, but really low chance. What's that? A croc. It'd have to come a long way south, wouldn't it? But in those days, there were dangerous beasts around. There were lions around. There were wolves. There were bears. There were all creatures that could kill you quite easily. Definitely snakes as well, like we have. So these are actually traditional things that the people feared. Actually, traditionally, biblically, they're also the things that kill you. The things that it talks about and that prophets warn about coming to get you about. So, all right. So we've got now 4, haven't we? We've got a white horse, a red horse, a black horse, and a green horse. Green. Now, I will just say a little word about, because, I got to read the Greek in the original, and it's choler is the word. Choler, where we get cholera from. It's the green, it's the pale green of a face that's dying. Yeah, that's what the colour is. It's not bright green. It's not like a tree leaf, or it's not, No, that's the colour. Sick green. Yeah. It's not good, is it? And it had a rider who was called Death, but Hades was following. And that's interesting. That shows that this is actually written likely to a bunch of people who were Greek thinking, not to Jewish people, because Hades was very much a Greek thing. He was the ruler of the place of the dead, which was called Hades as well, his place, which isn't what we call hell, the hell that is the final lake of burning sulfur and that sort of thing. In Greek, that was a thing called Tartarus. This was just the place of the dead. So he was coming to collect his dead. It's very much the idea there that was happening from all these things that were happening. So there's 4 horses. What are these 4 horses called? Usually. What do people call them? Yeah, the 4 horses of the apocalypse. This is it? Oh, that's them. That's them. Did you realize it was those? No, that's the 4 horses of the apocalypse. They didn't... Can I say, in popular culture, they have a lot more foreboding than this seemed to show to me. I don't know about you, but I look at it. These are all things that were happening anyway. They're all things that are quite common in the time. Famine and hunger happened a lot. The plagues came through quite regularly. In fact, we know that possibly at this time there was a great plague through much of the Roman Empire. 93, I think they believe that AD 93 there was a great plague that came through. So these were things that were really prevalent to the people. They understood them quite well. There were some famines around that time too that were quite strong. Now, they're spoken of in stronger terms, but it's not stuff they wouldn't understand quite well. I think us in our Western world, we look at this and panic, but actually this is a natural part of living at the time. Doesn't mean they're not heightened, or what this is, trying to say these great things are coming upon the earth. Interestingly though, do you think there's 4 horsemen anywhere else 4 horses anywhere else in the Bible? Oh, there are. This isn't just a John thing. This little bit is from Zechariah. Now, he actually starts, first of all, I've got my pictures. I looked for some pictures of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the 4 horses of the apocalypse. I like the first one, looks really good. The second picture is quite bizarre. They look like the 4 weird cats of the apocalypse. It's meant to be the 4 horsemen, but they don't look much like horses at all to me. But the first one, certainly, you can see the 4. The green one's sort of a yellowy green, with Hades sitting behind Death. The black one, they don't look that menacing. But we live in a time where menacing things of war are tanks, are fighter jets, are These amazing things. They're the menacing things of war. What was the menacing thing of war back in that time? Horses or chariots? They were the menacing things. So to speak in these terms was extremely menacing. And they knew this was battle coming. All right, I'm going to look at Zechariah 6, verses 1 to 3 and 7 to 8. It says, "Once more I looked, and this time I saw 4 chariots." So he's actually got chariots. "Emerging from between 2 mountains of bronze. Harnessed to the first chariot were red horses, to the second black horses, to the third white horses, and to fourth spotted horses." That's better than green, isn't it? Much better than green. "All of them strong." And there's a whole lot of talk about them in between. Then it says this at the last. I wanted to just get this bit. So the Lord said, "Go, walk about over the earth." That's what he basically gets them to do before, isn't it? All of them walk about throughout the earth. So they are doing so. "Then he cried out to me, 'Look, the ones going to the northland have brought me peace about the northland.'" It was actually the red ones that went to the north. Oh, no, sorry, the black went to the north. That's fascinating. They brought peace. And yet these were things of war. The chariot back then was a more powerful war thing. Certainly in Israel, because Israel was quite flat and chariots were very powerful. Around the bit where Revelation is written, not so flat. There would have been some areas that would have been good for chariots, but probably more likely horses would have been better. So you've got to think of the terrain and how it works and all that. But I found it fascinating that there's these 4 horses. The first bit of Zechariah talks about a white horse and a red horse going out and doing battle. So it's not a new thing. It's not a new idea. But these 4 horses are coming. And they would have known. Because their scripture was just the Old Testament. And they would have known Zechariah talks about the 4 horses. Here they are, coming to conquer, coming to do their thing. All right. So we've got the 4 horses already, but we've only had 4 seals, haven't we? So what are the 7 seals about? There's 3 more to go. We've done, and they're pretty quick. It runs through them pretty quick, doesn't it, the 4 horsemen? Let's have a look. Back to Revelation 6:7. "Then when he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who'd been slain because of the word of God and because of the testimony they have held. And they cried out with a great voice, saying, 'How long, holy and true Lord, till you vindicate our blood and judge those living upon the earth?' And he gave to each of them a white robe, and he said to them that they might rest for a little time until their fellow servants might be complete, even those about to be slain." So that's a fascinating little piece, isn't it? We've got the martyrs under the altar. Very much an idea that these are people that are kept by God, that have a very special place with God. And it's interesting, if you think of it at the time, martyrdom could seem like quite a futile thing, couldn't it? You stood up for Jesus and all that happened to you is you'd got killed. What's the point of that? Well, here John, and God through him, is saying, great point. Really important. They are under the altar. They're right up in the center of everything. So very much a vindication of who they are, but they still cry out, don't they? How long are you going to let this stuff happen? How long are you going to let all this death, all this murder, certainly of your saints, happen? How long? It's got to stop, doesn't it? This is a logical question. Certainly the church at the time will be thinking, we're getting killed constantly. We're getting thrown in prison. We're getting all these persecutions. God, where are you? That's an important question, isn't it? Wouldn't you yell that out? Do you yell that out now? God, where are you? Yeah, I do. Certainly do. God, where are you? God does give them something. He gives them a white robe, which is a sign of holiness, of acceptance, of great stature. Then says rest. It's interesting he says rest. That word can mean to go to sleep. And interesting, Paul talks about those who die fall asleep, waiting for the end. So sort of rest a time. But they do cry, and that cry to God is really important. So we've got the four horses, and then we have the saints cry out for justice from God. Can I say, this is one of the most important understandings in the book of Revelation. If you don't get this bit, you miss the ideas all through it. Because so vital in Revelation is the question, what is God doing while we're getting killed? While we're getting persecuted? While we're getting attacked? That's vital. All right. Let's look at Revelation 6:7 a little further. There's a sixth seal. We've only got 2 to go, haven't we? And I saw when he opened the sixth seal, a great earthquake happened, and the sun became black as hairy sackcloth. I've written that literally. That's literally what it says. I don't know does anyone have their English, other Bibles here? But I love that. Hairy sackcloth. It doesn't make sense to us, does it? It does to you, Chris, but you probably understand. It's goat hair, usually, black. They had sackcloth with... What's that? Likely, the goat. But yes. But actually, it was actually because their hair that they had on their sackcloth was the rough, coarse goat hair that was black. I'm not looking at the things beyond it yet, Chris, but just the... Yeah. So the sun became black as hairy sackcloth. That's a fascinating idea, isn't it, to look at. The whole moon became as blood, and the stars of the heavens fell to the earth as a fig tree throwing its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. It's a great picture, isn't it? The stars fall. Have you ever shaken a tree and then the things all fall down? They do just fall down anyway. Yeah. I had some friends that had olives, and the trick was we'd put these nets underneath, and you'd come and just shake off the olives. And the right ones would all just fall all the time. But this is the stars falling to the earth. That in their time was a great portent. That was like, oh my goodness, the stars are falling. The other day, actually, Lou and I were walking along, I believe it was near the beach, was it? Or where was it? Can't remember, but I remember looking, and I saw, she didn't see it. Which is one of those frustrating things, isn't it? I saw it obviously, oh wow, and it was a really strong shooting star that sort of fizzed through the sky and came down, and it's like, wow. Those things are pretty freaky when you see them, when they're big. The little ones that shoot, you go, oh, lovely little shooting star. No, this fizzed and they are meteors, yes. And when they come down, they're meteorites. That's right, isn't it? Yes. I remember being in Papua New Guinea and seeing one start. In fact, I was at a youth camp, and it was in one side of the sky. It tore across, and it was making this huge noise. We heard it, and it broke up into pieces and kept going, and just light was behind it, and everyone was amazed. I was sort of a young pastor at the time over there, but I was a pastor, and it was a youth camp that I was speaking on. And a whole lot of youth ran to me, what's happening, Pastor? Is it the end? Is it the end? Said, no, that's a meteor that's coming, and it was a big one. In fact, a little bit later, we heard boom, 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 as it actually hit the water, found out later, the ocean, over the mountain range over from where we were. So quite stunning. This is what it's looking at. Things like that. They're pretty amazing things to watch, aren't they? The stars are falling to the earth as fig trees, throwing its unripe figs. And heaven separated like a scroll being rolled up. Great pictures, aren't they? And every mountain and island were moved from their place. Then the kings of the earth, the great ones, the generals and the rich and the strong, everyone, slave and free, they hid themselves into the caves and into the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of the one seated upon the throne and from the anger of the Lamb. Or the wrath, it sometimes said, the orge of the Lamb, the wrath of the Lamb, the anger. Because the great day of the anger has come, and who is able to stand? That's pretty good, isn't it? Pretty intense. What day are they talking about, do you think? Judgment. Now, there's some fascinating things in it. It definitely is a day of judgment here. Because when you look at the Old Testament, it speaks about this great and terrible day of the Lord, and it speaks in these terms: the moon going blood and the sun going black and dark, and those sorts of words. Jesus says, and he's actually talking about when the temple is crushed, that people will yell to the mountains to fall on us. So he says those words too. It's certainly part of the Jewish law as a thing of woe to say. Interestingly, this is one of the things in the book of Revelation that confuses many people. Because why is a day of judgment here already? We're really early in the piece. What's going on? Some have said, it's when Christ dies. And can I say there are depictions of that? Because when Christ died, what happened to the sun? Went black. And I know that there's a popular thing, and there was earthquakes, there was movement, and there's a popular idea that God turned his face away, but actually that's not biblical at all. The Old Testament things that speak about that God is coming in judgment when these things happen. But it doesn't fit all the things that this speaks about. Can I say, I think there are echoes of it in it, because judgment certainly was upon the cross. And so this is talking about, and whether this is talking about a time or the action of God's judgment is the question. Does that make sense? Revelation is written more in ideas and about topics, I'd say, more than sequential time. And this is definitely talking about God coming in judgment, isn't it? That's what we have, God coming in judgment. It fits far more the final judgment for some of the things that are depicted. But why is it so early in Revelation? Because it does speak in topics. And we'll see, and it goes in circles too. What's that? It is cultural. Don't do linear time. No, they don't. One of our problems as Westerners, we read everything with linear time. And very much the ancients didn't do that. They did often speak in cycles. Wheels within wheels, that's it. Yes, important things are repeated over and over. So, we've now had 6 seals, haven't we? We've got the 4 horses, the saints crying out for justice from God. Is God bringing justice? He comes and acts in judgment, doesn't he? Do you think that's all of the justice that's happening? All right. This is a very strange thing that happens here, because suddenly it's like the writer goes off and says a whole lot of different stuff. But he doesn't really. We better very quickly look through it, because I know I'm taking a bit of time. It says, after this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth. This is in chapter 7. It suddenly turns over. Holding the 4 winds of the earth, that they might not blow upon the earth, nor upon the sea, nor upon every tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God. And he cried out in a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been to damage the earth and the sea, saying, do not damage the earth and the sea and the trees until we've put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. That's an interesting thing to say, isn't it? What does he mean by putting a seal on the foreheads? You're going to drip a wax on you and... Now, it's important here to understand that the word seal had 2 purposes here. It was the bit of wax, but it was also the signet ring that you shoved into the wax had a sign on it that was the seal. So that was important too. So when we speak about the seal, it's not just the waxy bit. It's the thing that it says on it, the picture that it has, that depicts your family or your area or whatever it is, your trade, all those things. So that's why he's talking about put a seal. So we're going to see a little more of that. And I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000 out of all the tribes of the sons of Israel. And I won't go through this bit quickly, because he basically just goes through each tribe and says 12,000. And then he says, and he jumps and he says, After these things, I looked and saw a great crowd, which no one is able to count, out of every nation, tribe, people, and tongue, standing before the throne and the Lamb, clothed in white robes and holding palm branches in their hands. Now, just a couple of quick things to go through there. 12,000? What do you think that means? Why do you think 12,000 for each of them? Do you think there's going to be 12,000 exactly Israelites there? You think so, Chris? I don't at all. 1,000 is a number that they put for just a big group. Always talking in thousands or tens of thousands. The 12 is fullness when it comes to people, the people of God. There are 12 tribes, there are 12 disciples. Very much the fullness of their number. Some do, and obviously, Chris, you think it's 140, but I don't think it is. I think it is a pictorial idea of many, of the fullness of the tribes will be there. They'll be there, 144,000. And then suddenly there's this massive crowd. Some actually think that the 144,000 are the massive crowd. I'm not so certain about that. I think it may have still have the Israel tone to it. Truth is, I'm not fussed, it'll happen as it happens. Any one of them can be right. But what is really interesting here is, what are they doing? They're holding palm branches. Very similar. The palm was a sign of victory. So they're holding palm branches. They're wearing white robes. Because actually, white robe meant not only clean, but also honoured, high status. But they're standing before the throne. What did those hiding in the rocks yell? Who can stand? Who can stand before the Lamb? The anger of the Lamb and the one seated upon the throne. The anger has come. Who can stand? What's happening here? There's many standing. Many, many, many standing. What's that, sorry? Yeah. Well, in the judgment. You can't think judgment's happened, this is after. This is part of the scene. These are standing in the judgment. That's quite important, isn't it? Then they say this, I'll read through this quickly because there's always worship. They say Revelation is the most worshipful book, probably other than Psalms. Constantly worship. It says, they cried out in a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God and to the one seated upon the throne and to the Lamb. Lou went looking for it. There's a famous song from the 90s to see if we could sing it this week, but all the bits online were very dated, weren't they? Yeah, a bit too dated. Yeah, it's a good song, isn't it? And all the angels standing around the throne, the elders, the four creatures, fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped God, saying, truly, praise and glory, wisdom and thanksgiving, honor and power and strength be to our God into the age of the ages. Amen. Well, the song says forever and ever, because that's what that means. So that's where they get that song from, isn't it? And then there's a little bit at the end, and answering, one of the elders asked me, who are those dressed in white and where did they come from? I said to him, my Lord, you know. He said to me, these are those coming out of the great tribulation, having washed their robes and whitened them in the blood of the Lamb. Because of this, they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And the one seated upon the throne will extend his tent over them. In other words, God is going to protect them. Protect the people who have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. The people who have connected with Jesus, who are with him. All the others are yelling, the anger of the Lamb, be careful. Now there's meant to be some irony there. How angry does a lamb get? You know, I've talked about my encounter with a lamb charging me and then looking at me and panicking and running away. It's very funny. But this is the true power. Doesn't look like he has power, but has all the true power. But these are the ones honoured. What's the difference between the two? It's a very simple difference. The ones who stand are the ones who have accepted his grace. That's all it is. There's no difference. These are the multitude from every tongue, tribe, and nation. Nearly messed that up, didn't I? The multitude stand. Who can stand? They can. So when I look at my 7 seals, we had the saints cry out for just from God. Then we had something there, but actually God acts judgment with the saints vindicated, isn't it? The white horse, the red horse, the black horse, the green horse are coming to aid God's judgment. They're symbols of the things that God uses to bring about his judgment. Whether they're a thing that's going to happen or things that have happened or things that are happening. And most theologians say they're the things that are always happening. I don't care which one, really. And the saints cry out for justice from God, because the truth is, this world doesn't give you justice. It says that God protects, but that doesn't mean he's going to protect you from death, does it? Because you notice that there's still those who are to die for Christ there. It's a different protection, isn't it? It's a different protection. It's a protection that is that you will be able to stand in that day, and more than stand, you will be given glory. You will be given honor. You will be able to stand before God in white robes. And you'll be able to worship God, even in the midst of his judgment of the earth. One of the great problems that I had growing up as a Christian is any time I heard judgment, I thought bad judgment for me. I didn't understand that when God judges you, he judges you well. When God judges you, he judges you with love. God judges you and says, you are righteous, you are right, you are good. That's a stunning thing, isn't it? And the truth is, all of those who are hiding only need to turn and they will get that same judgment. It's not like he's actively going, oh, I don't like you, I'm going to crush you. Come, turn, receive the judgment that God says you are good. I know for me it's taken years and it's still in there, the idea that all judgment is bad judgment. But that's just not true, and it's certainly not the biblical idea of judgment. God judges you and says you are good, you are loved. They're the 6 seals. I think that's quite important. There's another one, isn't there? Nearly can't forget the next one, because it's not complete, is it? If there's not 7, there's not complete. So let's have a look at number 7. Then he opened the 7th seal, and it became silent in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. What does that mean? We've got another lot of things to look at, 7 trumpets. What's important is the silence. Why do you think there was silence? They're holding their breath? Yeah. Certainly there's a sense of awe in here, isn't there? I remember when I was about 17, I went to Pink Floyd concert and with my friends. And I remember sitting there watching, and they had an awe-inspiring show. And I was quite close to the front. It was just in front, and just these amazing things happening. So it was music, and it was visuals, and it was everything happening all at once. And I remember at the end, all of us just stood there. Couldn't speak. Couldn't speak. This is true here. God comes, and you can't speak, but actually it's a little more. Always is. And I haven't written it in here, I haven't got it put in here. But after this, they bring out some incense and bring it before the altar. A little earlier, a couple of sermons ago, we saw some incense before the altar. What was that? Does anyone remember? The prayers of the saints. This is interesting. It's time to pray. Judgment's come, time to pray. What are the things that you've cried out for? That's what it's about. The saints cry out. God answers, and here we see the prayers of the saints coming up again. Are they being answered? Yes, God is answering. That's why there is silence. Silence for the prayers. It actually was the custom of the time was for everyone to go silent when the prayers happened. Not only in Christian, this is also in pagan and in Jewish things too. Everyone's silent for that time. We have silence. The prayers are brought forward because these are the things that bring forth God's true judgment. He acts upon them in true justice and judgment. What I thought would be nice to finish is for us just to sit for a minute or two in silence and allow your prayers to go up to God. Allow your prayers to go before him and know that he hears and he answers. Let's just sit in silence.